The Fantastic Four First Steps was directed by Max Shakman and it stars everyone. And this is our first time being introduced to the Fantastic Four at Marvel Studios, but this film takes place in a separate universe outside of the MCU. So in this movie, we have the Fantastic Four who must defend their planet from a ravenous space god called Galactus and his herald, the Silver Surfer. And now we got our movie. Now, this is one of my highly anticipated films of this year. When I heard announcement that the Fantastic Four were coming to Marvel Studios, I was like really excited. And when I saw the trailer for this movie, I was like, the trailers are good, but is this movie going to be good? Let's hope so. And when I saw the review embargoes for this movie, I heard the review embargoes, like the fans, the critics, and the audience have fell in love with this movie. And I'm talking about those who have seen it. And I was like, okay, this is actually like a must-watch movie. I'm gonna go see it. And after seeing the movie for myself, after I watched this whole movie for myself, I love this movie so much. The Fantastic Four First Steps is such a masterpiece and easily one of the best movies I ever seen this year. Now, I grew up with the Fantastic Four way back in my day. My first time getting into the Fantastic Four, the ones that I grew up with was the 2005 Fantastic Four and the sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer. They were part of my childhood, and I used to love these movies as a kid. But as an adult, I thought they were alright, but they're still part of my childhood, though. Now, when I saw the 2015 version, was not good. Yes, I did hear negative reviews about the 2015 version, and when I saw it for myself and walked out of there, that 2015 version was not good. It was complete trash, and I was like, it was also a fantastic fail. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm never watching that 2015 Fantastic Four film ever again. And when I saw the Fantastic Four First Steps, it's one of my favorite Fantastic Four movies, and I was like, okay, this one was a lot better than the other attempts that actually failed. So this movie, in my opinion, is one of my favorite Marvel movies this is actually one of my favorite Marvel movies in Marvel history. So with that down, let's talk about the actors and the characters themselves. Starting off with is Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic. Now, when I heard the announcement that Pedro Pascal was being cast as Mr. Fantastic, I was like, my reaction was, well, since y'all I said, okay, well, let me see how, I said, okay, since y'all cast him, let's see how he does in this movie. And he did a really good job in this movie. Now with Mr. Fantastic in this movie, he's the leader of the group. He does have some really cool stretching powers. His power is to stretch, like he always does in the comics, and like he always do in the other Fantastic Four lore. And he's actually the smartest. He's also the smartest man alive. He writes down like science equations to actually figure out a plan or something. And when him and his team when him and the Fantastic Four team found out about Galactus coming to devour their planet, they must work together and figure out a plan how to stop Galactus from ruining their planet. And that is pretty much all I can say. And he also has some excellent chemistry with the characters that we have seen before. And also, he has excellent chemistry, and he does have some really funny or serious moments in this movie as well. And that is pretty much all I can say. And Pedro Pascal is really good in this movie as Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, and that's all I can say for Mr. Fantastic. Next up is Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, aka the Invisible Woman. Now, the Invisible Woman in this movie, she does have some really, really interesting moments in this movie. Her powers, I really enjoyed her visibility powers of how not only she turns invisible, but she also creates some kind of invisibility shields. And also, when she does turn invisible, you don't see her, and she does appear out of nowhere. And she has some really excellent chemistry, with her Fantastic Four team. And also her team has to find a way to stop Galactus and his herald, the Silver Surfer, and that is all I can say. And Vanessa Kirby gives one of the best performances I've ever seen her playing in a Marvel movie like this. And she did a really good job as Sue Storm. And the Invisible Woman as well. So, and that is all I can say. And Vanessa Kirby is really good in this movie as Sue Storm, aka the Invisible Woman. And that's all I can say for the Invisible Woman. Next up is Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. Now, the Human Torch in this movie, he's the comedy relief. He's the comedy relief of this movie. He does have some really funny moments and some serious moments as well. He also has some really cool fire-like powers. And yeah, he does have some really cool fire-like powers. He also has some excellent chemistry with his team as well. And him and his team are trying to create a plan to stop the Silver Surfer and Galactus. Well, mostly Galactus but mostly just Galactus himself, but mostly just both, I believe. But I think that's all I can say. He's also a ladies' man, and that's pretty much all I can say. And that's pretty much it. So, and Joseph Quinn is really good in this movie as Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, and that's all I can say for the Human Torch. Next up is Ebon Moss-Bachrach, as Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. Now, I grew up with The Thing as one of my favorite characters. Now, when I grew up with the Fantastic Four from 2005 as a kid, The Thing has been one of my favorite characters. Now, and he's still my favorite character till this day. And with the Thing character here in this movie, he's one of my favorite characters in this film. Now, the Thing in this movie, he does have superhuman strength. He's made out of rocks. Yeah, he's made out of he has like orange rocks all over his body, like he does in the comics, like he does in the movies, or his action figures of some sorts. And when I was looking at his head sculpt, I was like, this is straight out of the original cartoon. Not only this is out of the original, not only his head sculpt is straight out of the original cartoon, it was also accurate from the comics, from the Marvel comics, and that is pretty much all. So the head sculpt looks pretty good and very accurate to the comics and also the original cartoon. Now he does have superhuman strength, and him and his team, him and the Fantastic Four team, they found out about Galactus and Silver Surfer, and they found out mostly about Galactus coming to devour their planet, and they must work together as a team to figure out a plan how to stop Galactus. And that is pretty much all I can say. And also, he does have some really cool moments, some really funny and serious and intense moments in this movie as well, and that's pretty much all I can say. And Ebon Moss-Bachrach is really good in this movie as Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, and that's all I can say for The Thing. Next up is Herbie. Now, one of the things I did not know about the Fantastic Four having a robot, and I was like, wait, so they have a robot? Let me look him up. Now, when I looked up Herbie, he was part of the Marvel comics. So I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know they had a robot. Okay, that's pretty cool. So Herbie is actually one of the most interesting characters in this film. So Herbie, he does help out the team with their mission. He's either I think when I was looking at this, I was like, I feel like he's either their butler, their helper, or their assistant, or just both. I would say mostly just both. But I think Herbie is a really cool character in this movie. And Herbie is really good in this movie, and that's all I can say for Herbie. Next up is Julia Garner as Shalabal, aka the Silver Surfer. Now the Silver Surfer that I grew up with from Rise of the Silver Surfer was the Norm Rad Silver Surfer, and I was like, and I did not know. One thing I did not know is that we have a female Silver Surfer. I was like, wait, we have a female Silver Surfer? Let me look it up. And when I looked it up, I found out that Shalabal was the female Silver Surfer in the Marvel comics, because I looked it up. And I gotta say, bringing her into this movie, she did look pretty cool. And one of the things I really liked about this character, she's very emotionalist. She doesn't have like any face expressions at all throughout the movie. Yeah, she doesn't have any face expressions at all throughout this movie. She's made out of like this silver this chrome metallic silver color scheme, which does look pretty cool. She rides on her surfboard, and she does have a backstory as well. Yeah, she does have a backstory which is very intense as well. So that is all I can say. And she's also one of Galactus's heralds in this movie, and that's pretty much it. And Julia Garner is really good casting for this role as Shalla-Bal, aka the Silver Surfer. Now, I feel like this Silver Surfer does look pretty cool, and I really hope we'll probably see her more in the MCU, hopefully in the near future. And Julia Garner is really good in this movie as Shalla-Bal, aka the Silver Surfer, and that's all I can say for the Silver Surfer. And last, but definitely not least, is Ralph Ineson as Galactus. Now Galactus in this movie, he looks pretty accurate to the comics, and he does look pretty badass in this movie. Now, with Galactus in this movie, he only shows up probably at least later on during the movie, but he's actually one of my favorite comic book villains I ever seen in this film. Now, the last time we saw Galactus was in Rise of the Silver Surfer, and the last time we saw him wasn't, because the last time we saw him in that movie, he was a cloud. And I was like, why would they turn him into a cloud? That was just kind of childish. But in this movie, he's comic book accurate in live action in this movie. Now, from what I heard, Galactus is actually one of the best villains in this movie. He's humongous, he's scary, he's dark, decepting, and easily one of my favorite Marvel villains in this film. And he's the devourer of all planets. But one of the things that could have been, he's not in the movie all that much. Well, the thing is, he's not in the movie all that much. You don't really see him a lot until probably like at least later on during the movie. But I was like, I really wish he had a lot more screen time in this movie to see what his plan is. So I think that's all I could say for Galactus. And Galactus in this movie was way better in this movie than he was in Rise of the Silver Surfer. So I gotta say, they done Galactus justice in this movie than they did before. And Ralph Ineson, and the way Ralph Ineson talks as Galactus feels more creepy, feels more intense and scary. And I was like, that is one of the best things about this villain in this movie. And Ralph Ineson is really good in this movie as Galactus, and that's all I can say for Galactus. And I think that's it for the actors and the characters themselves. So let's talk about the action sequences. The action scenes in this movie were actually dealt a lot better in this movie than they were from the previous few films. Now, the ones from the previous movies, there was some I liked and some I didn't like. But the action sequences in this movie were done better in this movie, including the final fight scene between, with the Fantastic Four going against Galactus. That was one of the best fight scenes I ever seen in a Marvel movie like this. Now, the final battle and the action sequences were pretty good in this movie, and I feel like they actually were trying to like take their time to show what the action sequences, to show you what's going on, what's it about, the Fantastic Four, fighting against Galactus in this movie is one of the best fight scenes I ever seen in this movie. Now, with this film taking place in a different universe, in the 1960s, in a futuristic universe, this takes place outside of the MCU. So I was like, I call this more like a standalone movie away from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But this takes place in a totally different universe, but it takes place in the 1960s in a futuristic universe. Now, what I liked about this universe, the 1960s vibes in this movie, there were some 1960s vibes that actually piques my interest. So I was like, I feel like the Fantastic Four animated cartoon kind of came out back in the 60s, and that's why this film takes place in the 1960s. So the 1960s futuristic retro universe looks pretty cool, and also the way the people dressed in this movie, the way the people dressed in this movie, there was some 1960s cars in this movie. There's all 1960s vibes in this movie. And I think the 1960s vibes in this movie were pretty cool. Now, with the cinematography in this movie really piqued my interest. I feel like the cinematography was well done in this movie because I feel like the cinematography was shot with IMAX cameras, and I think the director did a really good job with the cinematography, so you can know what's going on, see what the fight scene is all about, see this 1960s futuristic universe. This looks pretty cool, and the cinematography is wonderful. Now, the visual effects in this movie were hands down one of the best things about this movie. Now, when I saw all the visual effects in this movie, I was like, one of the things that I saw in the trailer, after I saw the trailers for myself, I was like, I hope the visual effects do a lot better than they were from the other MCU projects that we've seen before. And the visual effects in this movie were cleaned up perfectly well. I love the visual effects in this movie, how they were cleaned up well. Like Galactus, for example. Galactus and the Silver Surfer are both CGI characters, and they are done pretty well in this movie. And also, with Galactus and the Silver Surfer and the Thing being CGI characters, they actually were cleaned up pretty well in this movie. So I was like, I feel like the visual effects on those characters were done justice in this film. So I love the visual effects in this movie. Now, the editing and the pacing in this movie I feel like the editing and pacing does not like rush things through to get to the main point. They actually do tend to take their time to show you and know and actually explain to you what's going on. And the editing and the pacing is perfectly well done in this movie. Now, we have seen the origin story of the Fantastic Four so many times. Now, it was shown, and it was also explained in the movie. Well, it was explained how the Fantastic Four got their powers. Now, with the Fantastic Four getting their powers, it wasn't shown, it was explained. So I was like, oh, so I really love the explanation, because this is not in the typical origin story that we have seen a million times in the comics or in the previous films. I was like, we have seen the origin story so many times. I said, we've seen the origin story of the Fantastic Four so many times, including myself. I've seen the origin story of the Fantastic Four so many times. So I was like, I'm glad they explained it. They don't really, well, they do kind of show you, but they also explained it, how the Fantastic Four got their powers. And they're also astronauts. They're astronauts like they were in the comics, like they were in the, well, I'm not a comic book person. This is actually something that I actually discovered. Now, the Fantastic Four, yes, they're astronauts. We do discover how they got their powers. Like I said, it was explained, but it wasn't shown. It was technically just explained. Now, with the story in this movie, the story could have used a bit more work. There was some parts of the movie, there was some story elements in this movie that could have used a bit more work. Now, there was some intense moments in this movie that actually piqued my interest. I was like, there was some, with the color tone in this movie, there were some things that actually felt more kid friendly. There were some parts in the movie that actually feels dark and feels intense in this film. And that's one of the best things I love about this movie. Like when you meet Galactus, for example, things just get very intense for the first time, and how intense that scene gets. And the plot is actually pretty much easy to follow. So I really enjoyed the plot details for this movie. So the plot details were actually easy to follow, and that's all I can say. Now, for the rest of this movie, I think that's all I can say for the Fantastic Four First Steps. So if you have seen this movie, now if you haven't seen this movie, go see it. It's a must-watch movie. If you have seen this film, what did you think of it? You didn't like it or you didn't like it, but for me, I enjoyed this movie so much, way better than the ones I have seen before. So with this movie, this has got to be like one of my favorite Fantastic Four movies ever in Marvel history. So I guess this is actually one of the best Marvel movies from Marvel Studios. And I think everyone who worked on this movie did a fantastic job with this movie. So I think that's all I can say for this review for the Fantastic Four First Steps, and there's nothing much else to say. So be sure to like, subscribe, press the notification button, follow me on Instagram and comment down below, and I'll see you on my next video. Thank you for watching.